The end of 2024 marked the full-on fracturing of Belfast dissident Republican gang Óglaigh, aka ONH, with the group's veteran leader, Carl Reilly, losing his grip on power to one-time right-hand man, Tony McDonnell. For years, the 49-year-old Reilly and 55-year-old McDonnell were dissident comrades, as leading members of both ONH and its political wing, the Republican Network for Unity, aka RNU. But following Reilly's release from prison in February 2024 for ONH membership, the tides began to turn, with rumors that Reilly intended to take ONH in a more political direction and accept government peace money on behalf of RNU. ONH had been on a so-called ceasefire since 2018, following a 9-year up-and-down campaign against the British state. But almost immediately after the 2018 declaration, saying the environment wasn't right for armed conflict, ONH began a 6-year streak of murders that saw 7 Catholic drug dealers and suspected informants die in a hail of gunfire, with the majority of the attacks carried out by a pair of hitmen known for their precision and near-perfect aim. Because while their paramilitary campaign was ultimately fruitless, ONH was absolutely prolific at taxing drug dealers in the form of so-called protection money. And while this operation was mostly done under the command of Carl Reilly, in December 2023, he was jailed for 3 months for ONH membership, leaving Tony McDonnell in charge. McDonnell, once a member of the new IRA, had served a 21-month prison sentence for collecting information on police officers and never fully agreed with the ONH ceasefire supported by Reilly. And he wasn't alone, because following Reilly's release from prison in February 2024, it was reported that Reilly agreed to accept government peace money on behalf of RNU, an act of betrayal that resulted in McDonnell and his supporters walking away in numbers that started small but quickly grew, disavowing Carl Reilly and RNU, threatening to end the ceasefire, and claiming to be the true bearers of the ONH name. A highly public but non-violent feud ensued, and while the Reilly faction were clearly better at taking pictures, the McDonnell faction got big fast, and in late 2024 began a smear campaign against Reilly that for many years would have been an automatic death sentence, because the more militant McDonnell faction also had more guns, and by the end of 2024, more members too. A dramatic fall from grace for Carl Reilly, the once irrefutable boss of ONH. But Carl Reilly vowed to continue to lead his RNU-supported ONH faction, because while McDonnell had the numbers, Carl Reilly certainly wasn't alone, with men like ex-provisional IRA bomber and Ardoyne ONH leader Thomas Ta Cosgrove supporting him in North Belfast, and Reilly's cousin Sean O'Reilly at the center of his West Belfast power base. The 49-year-old O'Reilly was a feared dissident Republican who was previously jailed for 30 months for his involvement in a botched ONH punishment shooting in 2012, and led ONH when Carl Reilly went to prison from 2015 to 2018. So following the ONH split of 2024, taxi driver Sean O'Reilly was second in command of his cousin Carl's faction, a title that came with a massive target on his back. On the morning of Sunday, February 23rd, 2025, O'Reilly was sitting in his taxi outside his depot in the Poleglass area of West Belfast. That's when 2 masked men, one in dark clothing and the other in a yellow high-vis vest, approached the car and fired 5 shots into the driver's side window. But these 2 hitmen were not the precision shooters involved in previous ONH hits, as 4 of the 5 bullets missed O'Reilly completely, with just one hitting him in the shoulder before the duo escaped on foot. O'Reilly was rushed to the Royal Victoria Hospital, where he underwent a successful surgery to remove the bullet lodged in his collarbone. but a subsequent scan showed a severed nerve in his bicep that would require him to travel to a facility in Glasgow for immediate surgery. But due to O'Reilly's high profile as a dissident Republican, Police Scotland, who would have had to provide security during the trip, refused the visit. O'Reilly would ultimately be accepted by a hospital in Dublin, where armed Irish Gardaí remained stationed outside the room during his second surgery. And while the procedure was successful, O'Reilly still had a long road to recovery.
I would describe those as responsible as having no place in our society, and I believe that society doesn't want these people to live in its community, and the answers to what has happened lie in those communities, and I urge people to have the courage to come forward and speak to us.
Later that week, on Friday, February 29th, police announced that within 24 hours of the shooting, they had recovered a backpack in a hedge near the scene, containing a high-vis vest, baseball cap, 2 pistols, and ammunition. And given how quickly police found the hidden bag, many suspected it couldn't simply have been luck. The police also announced Sean O'Reilly had personally identified the men who tried to kill him, but was refusing to provide the shooters' names to the PSNI. In a separate statement from O'Reilly, he said he and his friends had been victims of a smear campaign by the McDonnell faction, while adding that he believes state agents were involved in his attempted murder. On March 9th, detectives confirmed that one of the pistols recovered in the hedge was the gun used to shoot O'Reilly, while the other had its barrel detached and was faulty, leading police to believe there were 2 shooters, but only one gun went off. A week later, in mid-March, the McDonnell faction issued a threat against 7 members of RNU, by now synonymous with the Reilly faction, giving the individuals 12 hours to distance themselves from Reilly or face death, with sources telling the Irish News that the McDonnell faction abandoned a bid to kill one of these individuals 2 weeks prior in North Belfast, with the murder attempt being aborted at the last minute due to a heavy police presence in the New Lodge area. On April 20th, Easter Sunday 2025, Sean O'Reilly was spotted in public for the first time since the attack, when he attended an Easter commemoration put on by RNU, wearing a black sling to support his left arm. A stern-faced O'Reilly looked on as tribute was paid to him on stage. It was a relatively tame Easter celebration by RNU and ONH standards, as 3 years prior, it was masked men who took to the microphone to confirm a still unified ONH had taken lethal action against former members and drug dealers.
Over the past number of years, we have reorganised, restructured and rearmed. Sadly, a small number of people thought they could thwart that regroup. Some were acting out of ego, some were acting as British agents. We used lethal force to show them and others that we will not be usurped by anyone. And we have taken lethal force also against the dealers of death.
On May 2nd, 2025, father of 6 Tony McDonnell and his 36-year-old daughter, Óglaigh, appeared alongside each other at Belfast Crown Court, both pleading not guilty to a single count of assisting in arranging the 2022 ONH Easter commemoration. And the charges, which were first brought forth in October 2024, were suspicious to say the least. Because while it's highly likely both McDonnell and Carl Reilly played a part in the Easter 2022 event, the police waited 2.5 years to bring charges, and specifically waited until the moment the Reilly-McDonnell breakup escalated into a public feud, with Reilly supporting the ONH ceasefire and McDonnell threatening to end it. The police were clearly using their influence to sway ONH, but it backfired, because in the eyes of the McDonnell faction, the charges only increased Big Tony's reputation as a Republican at war with the British state. But it must be said, ONH, collectively, has remained 2 steps ahead of the police for years, strictly operating in Republican areas where talking to the cops, let alone giving evidence in court, comes with a long history of getting you shot. And while many people know who tried to kill Sean O'Reilly, Getting them to say it on the record was another thing entirely. So on Tuesday, May 6th, the police made a public appeal for help and released CCTV images of the two men it says were involved in the shooting, along with a photo of the high-vis vest worn by one of them. But the image showing one of the gunmen's face was oddly pixelated. O'Reilly's solicitor voiced his concerns, saying, "We see no good reason why the PSNI would ask for help in identifying the suspects, and at the same time take steps to pixelate their faces." The PSNI responded that it made the move to prevent misidentification or retribution, and backed the appeal with a £20,000 reward. In early May, armed police officers performed a major search operation in Divis Tower off the Lower Falls Road, with more than 100 residents forced to evacuate the high-rise complex so police could conduct searches in relation to the attempted murder of Sean O'Reilly. During the search, a number of suspicious objects were taken away, including a white Ford Puma police believe was linked to the attack. A 61-year-old was arrested and detained on suspicion of attempted murder, but he was later released on investigative bail pending further inquiries. The police were clearly making inroads on the shooters of Sean O'Reilly, but McDonnell seemed far less concerned and much more intent on continuing to settle scores with his O&H rivals. That same month, a member of the McDonnell faction was spotted driving through Ardoyne in North Belfast, tossing posters mocking local O&H boss Thomas "Ta" Cosgrove. But the veteran Republican Cosgrove, who was well regarded in Ardoyne, immediately confronted the Tony McDonnell-linked man and punched him to the ground before beating him some more. And in footage obtained by the Sunday World, the McDonnell-linked man can be heard pleading to be left alone as Cosgrove lays into him. But the Cosgrove incident, like the O'Reilly attack months earlier, were seen by many as detrimental to support for Tony McDonnell, given both Cosgrove and O'Reilly's long-standing Republican backgrounds. Because while the McDonnell faction was bigger, it was still fighting for support, as manpower shortages had forced McDonnell's crew to draft new IRA members just to fill the ranks at a henchman's recent funeral. Days before O'Reilly's attempted murder in February, the McDonnell faction laid to rest Joe Graham, a veteran O&H dissident, with masked men accompanying Graham's coffin as it made its way through West Belfast on February 21st. But what was revealed in the aftermath of the incident with Ta Cosgrove was that a handful of those masked men were actually members of the new IRA. The new IRA, who have never been on ceasefire, allegedly agreed to provide men at Graham's funeral in exchange for 2 O&H guns, with further talks of the McDonnell gang being assimilated into the new IRA altogether. But this pact didn't last, as the handguns that were to be provided were believed to have been confiscated after the Sean O'Reilly attack, and the new IRA altogether not wanting to take sides in the now violent O&H feud, a feud that was about to get a major break.
Now, a court has heard allegations that a 50-year-old man acted as a lookout in the shooting of a taxi driver in West Belfast earlier this year. 50-year-old Hugh Black from Rosehead in Belfast is accused of attempting to murder the man and the murder of Daniel McLean in North Belfast 4 years ago.
On Tuesday, May 13th, 50-year-old Hugh Black was arrested in the Rosehead area of Ardoyne on suspicion of 2 murders and the attempted murder of Sean O'Reilly. The 2 killings for which Black was suspected were the 2018 murder of drug dealer Jim Donegan and former O&H man Danny McLean's murder in 2021, with Donegan killed for his alleged failure to pay protection money to O&H, and McLean gunned down after his past in the British Army became public during a 2019 trial for O&H membership. And while killed for 2 very different reasons, the Donegan and McLean hits were both carried out by a single gunman, and all eyes were now on Hugh Black. The following day, Black was charged with the murder of Danny McLean and the attempted murder of Sean Reilly, but no charges were brought forth for the murder of Jim Donegan.
The senior investigating officer outlined the PSNI's case to the court. He said they believe Mr. Black is not one of the two gunmen, but rather his role, he suggested, was that of a lookout, or to identify Mr. O'Reilly to the gunmen to shoot.
On the morning of the O'Reilly shooting, police said they had CCTV imagery tracking the white Ford Puma they confiscated from Divis Tower to Black's address in Ardoyne. The vehicle then remained there for 2 minutes before driving to an area near O'Reilly's taxi depot in Poleglass, where Black was dropped off. Police believe Black then played the role of lookout, as CCTV is said to show him unmasked, glancing down a footpath, before two gunmen approach the area from that direction and shoot O'Reilly inside his taxi. And minutes after the shooting, CCTV also allegedly shows Hugh Black leading the masked gunman down an alley. Ballistics also revealed that one of the guns recovered in the backpack found by police was the same pistol used to kill Danny McLean. McLean, who had grown paranoid in the aftermath of his military past being made public, was shot dead while he sat in his Audi outside a North Belfast pub in 2021. And it was now the police's case that shooter was Hugh Black, with gait analysis noting the distinctive running style of the man seen jogging away from McLean's car before getting into a vehicle registered to Black and driving off. Black, a painter by trade, was arrested in the immediate aftermath of McLean's murder, but later released. Police said both charges linked Black to involvement in ONH over a 4-year period, saying that in 2021 there was a particular internal feud, and this parting had developed into a violent feud which led to Mr. O'Reilly's attempted murder. But police also conceded Black had not made a formal statement, and that they had no DNA or eyewitness evidence linking him to either shooting. Hugh Black was denied bail, with the judge expressing fears he could interfere with the investigation if released. On July 11th, a pipe bomb was left in front of the Poleglass home of a Carl Reilly-linked RNU member, with the man bravely lifting the device and dropping it into a bucket of water before cops arrived on the scene an hour later. And while police said the device was viable, pictures showed the pipe bomb to be missing a fuse, with locals believing it had been designed to intimidate rather than maim or kill, and linked to a dispute between two families on either side of the ONH divide. Over the rest of the summer, Tony McDonnell continued recruitment for his anti-ceasefire ONH faction, as he brought in new members, including his former New IRA comrade, 55-year-old Christopher Cricky Notorantonio. The Ballymurphy-bred Notorantonio, from an infamous Republican family of the same Italian name, was jailed for 2.5 years in 2013 for trying to extort £12,500 from a Belfast businessman who was also dealing drugs. But many are likely more familiar with Cricky's granddad, Francisco, who was murdered in 1987 by the UDA after the Loyalists were provided intentionally false intelligence by the British Army to protect the IRA double agent known as Steak Knife, aka Freddie Scappaticci. And while Francisco's grandson Cricky dabbled in republicanism, he was known to many as nothing more than a common criminal who only used his family name when it suited his needs. In October 2025, Hugh Black was denied bail for a second time, with Black telling anyone who would listen that he wasn't involved, but instead being thrown to the wolves by an informant. And while it could be years before Black's case reaches trial, the alleged CCTV evidence against him will be a challenging mountain to climb. But a month later in November, all major news outlets made a shocking revelation. As it was reported, ex-prisoner groups linked to ONH, the INLA, and the Southeast Antrim UDA would receive a combined £2.9 million in transitioning money from the government-funded Peacework scheme, with the prisoner support wing of RNU, i.e. the Reilly faction, in line to receive just under £1 million, aka the peace money at the center of the ONH split. But for RNU to get its cash in full, the Reilly faction must stay on its best behavior, with any retribution for the attempted murder of Sean O'Reilly, likely resulting in all funds being cut off. Certainly a difficult, if not necessary, pill to swallow for his cousin Carl. Because while the peace money very much appears to be the Reilly faction entering a new phase of paramilitary life, it leaves them vulnerable in gangland terms, something the McDonnell faction is undoubtedly aware of. Because a month later, 2 more unlit pipe bombs were left outside the homes of Reilly supporters in Ardoyne. And while nobody was hurt, the intimidation was real, with the 5,000-person North Belfast neighborhood sadly becoming central to the ONH feud. And just to be clear, places like Ardoyne, Poleglass, and any other area mentioned in this video are largely filled with good, hardworking people who have nothing to do with paramilitaries or crime. But it's also these same people who are at risk of being caught up in violence, so long as the Reilly-McDonnell feud goes on. That's why I hope, for the public's sake, that the police deal with ONH before ONH deals with itself.